So I thought I'd make another video. It's pretty late at night. Just got doing some paperwork for the Social Security office and wanted to make a video and talk about, as you can see, it's chlorine I have, trying to disinfect. But anyway, wanted to talk about some of the experiences that I had. And when I was homeless and in my early 30s, I had been in every homeless environment you can ever imagine. Like if I've lived at probably over like 45 to probably over 50 places, just separate places I found on Craigslist. Everything, about 90% of it to 85% of it was usually very bad. Some were, there were some, well, I would say, yeah, about 80% of it, but there were a few kind situations where I came across where, like, I met a Christian guy when I was in my early 30s, and I was sleeping outside, and I had posted on Craigslist, can you give me a place to live? I'll do chores, whatever it is. I'm on unemployment, but I can't afford rent. It's cold, and I remember I think it was like sleet outside, and this guy randomly called me, and he was a quadriplegic. This guy was paralyzed from the neck down, and he couldn't move any of his limbs. He was just like, but he was fully conscious of everything and aware. And he called me in the hospital. Never talked to him over the phone for a little while, and he said he was looking for maybe someone to, like, he could maybe get me a job, and maybe as a caretaker. So I had nothing to do, and I think I went all the way to, was it Fort Worth? I think it could have been all the way in Fort Worth. And when I got there, met this quadriplegic guy. He was in his room by himself. Began to tell me, this nice guy, said that at a very early age, his family had taught him, or his dad, he was a single child, and he used to be into like motocross, dirt bikes and stuff, and he was pretty wealthy. He had like his own house, and he had his own business, and he was like a contractor. And he had an accident that left him in a quadriplegic state, and I was talking to him, and just there just to listen to what he had to say, and I didn't have anything, and he seemed kind of lonely himself, and he seemed kind to me, and he was getting bed sores, and I remember like there was a nurse came in and treated some of his bed sores, and I helped treat some of his bed sores with the nurse, which was very weird because usually the nurses don't allow you to do anything like that. And he was like, yeah, it's okay, can you help? And I did with the nurse, and I was listening to his stories, and he said he was wanting to leave the place. He said he was tired of, didn't want to be in the hospital anymore, and he was trying to get me to rent a vehicle, sneak him out of the house, and he had the money to do it, and get into a hotel. And I was like, dude, that's crazy. I was like, I can't do that, man. I was like, I'm not your family, you just met me, and by all means, I'm not there to take advantage of any of the situations, but I was just basically kind of there listening to his stories, and I needed a place to stay, and I couldn't remember everything because it was so long ago, but I think he was supposed to be moving to his house, or like he had a house, and he said he was going to be moving there, and he needed a caretaker, and see if maybe I could help him, and he would pay me, and I'd give me a place to stay. And I let him know. I talked to him for a little while, and I visited him once or twice, and I think one of his family members came in and visited him with a kid. I asked him, I was like, where's your family? You have family to take care of you? He said he really didn't have any family at all to take care of him. He was pretty lonely. And he said he believed in God, and and those were kind of more of the experiences, went and got him some soda, went and, I think it was like, I don't know if it was a particular type of soda he wanted or something to eat, and I had a few dollars, and talked to him for a little while. And this is like late at night, this is like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and it's kind of gloomy in the hospital and stuff. Not too many staff members. And anyway, somehow he got in contact with me again. I forgot, I don't know how, like a couple weeks later, I talked to him over the phone again for a little while. And then I called like a month later because he was supposed to be moving out of the hospital and transferring, I think, to his house. And he was going to get organized something with his family because he didn't have any family, but he had like a couple of them, but none of them, he said, really wanted to take care of him. And he didn't want to be in the hospital anymore. And, I did the best to sort of comfort him, be an ear to listen to whatever he had to say. And I talked to him a couple of times over the phone, and about a couple months later I called again, and I was told that he had died. He had passed away. And that was the last that I heard of that guy. And no one visited this guy. It was pretty lonely. Nobody talked to him. And he was probably about 35 to anywhere from 35 to 45 years old, I would estimate. And he was perfectly clear-minded, but he was, obviously he's in a quadriplegic, meaning he can't move his arms and legs. And, he said he believed in God, and he said he saw my posts on Craigslist, looking for somebody to help me, and, for any work, anything. And at this point, I'm on unemployment, getting like $100 a week. And, I was just constantly just posting on Craigslist, can you, I was begging the people on Craigslist if they had even like a doormat, that I could like sleep in the front door, and I pay them like $100 a week or something. I didn't care. I just wanted not to have a roof over my head instead of sleeping underneath the bridge in parks. And no one ever called. About 80-90% of the time. But when they did, sometimes like that, I didn't get a place to stay, but I talked to people. And then there was another situation where there was another guy that was he was a quadriplegic, but he could still move some of his arms, and he was in a wheelchair. And this guy looked a lot like Mickey, which was my brother Frankie Paloma, my brother Frankie's friend. And I talked to him, and he actually called me, and I met this guy. He said he wanted an in-house caretaker, and he was going to pay me really well. Like, he was actually going to pay me well, but I told him, I was like, I'm not certified. I like to do all that, but I'm not certified trained, to do all that kind of stuff. And are you sure, don't you want to kind of talk to me more than just a few times? And I think I rented a car. I drove. It was kind of like in a country, sort of, a little bit, kind of spaced out houses. It wasn't in kind of a small town. And I went there, and there was an old lady already there, like in her 50s, already taking care of him. And he was like, I don't trust that lady. He was like, I don't trust that lady. And I didn't say anything, because I'm just new to this environment. It was a pretty nice home. And he had video games. He had like a bunch of not arcade, but like Xbox and PlayStation. And he was telling me how they were going to make a special controller so he could play video games, because he could only move, and he had this wheelchair that could kind of like a remote, and it could drive him to these little places in his room. And so before I got there, I went and visited him, and then I talked to him for a couple of hours, watching TV. He was telling me a story. He said he got into a car wreck. And he called me again, I think like a week later, said, hey, can you bring me something to eat? So at this time, I don't know if I had just gotten on disability. I don't think I had been on, I think I had just gotten either on disability, it was right before I got on disability. And I went and drove. I don't even know this guy, and he said he wanted, something, whatever, a very specific meal from a Mexican restaurant. So I went to the Mexican restaurant he told me to go to, and I got whatever he wanted. It's been like $40, getting like whatever, sopapillas and certain kind of rice with pepper or whatever it was he wanted. Went there and picked it up in the car that I rented, because I was renting the car for a different reason, but I just happened to still have the car at the time. I get to this location, pick up the food, and everyone's kind of staring at me. And one second, let me pass gas. I get to this. Location. Everyone's kind of staring at me like they know who I am, is being prepared, but I don't ever really think of it so much. I'm like, this guy really didn't seem to so much feel like there's not very much of an outcome that I think is going to come other than just to kind of give support to this guy, and that's what I'm doing. But I thought it was nice enough for me, this guy's in a wheelchair, to get him something nice to eat and talk for a little while, because he didn't have any friends and didn't have anybody to talk to. And he didn't trust the lady there, and it was a very empty house, like there was nobody there. They had a little wheelchair. It wasn't like a trailer, but it was like a trailer house, but it was a pretty big house, or a kind of big trailer with like a little ramp. And I saw the lady come in and kind of pick him up on this special gurney or whatever that picks him up and kind of helps him change clothes and stuff. And he was perfectly fine, and he was kind of joking with me a little bit, kind of sort of cheering up the moment. And I talked to him. I think after I had that meal with him, I'd tell him I'd call him again, let's get to know each other, and if I have any certifications at that time or something, I'd work part-time, because I'm not certified, and I had just met this guy. And I wasn't abandoning the situation, so I talked to him. I said I was going to show up, and I was. And, after the 2-3 times I visited him, and about a couple months later, I forgot what he told me. He said, he already found somebody, but he still wanted maybe me to come by. And it's like, all right, or something. I don't even remember what it was, but he eventually got somebody within a week or two after I had left. And he had said, I called the phone number where he called from, and I was told that he passed away. And these are some of the traumatizing things that I experienced. I'm homeless. Nobody seems to care in the world. And here, the only people that seem to be calling me were people that are already struggling themselves and pretty lonely themselves, trying to find some hope or maybe trying to help me. And but he had passed away, or at least that's what I was told, and never heard from this guy again. And I was always thinking to myself, there's recording devices, cameras, and he had a nice LCD TV screen. And I was there just to give support because he didn't have anybody to talk to. And, he was telling me a little bit about his life. And, I had gotten a couple tacos, I think, for myself, and we're eating, just talking. But it was affecting, it's like I meet these people and they pass away and they were lonely themselves. And here, within a couple of weeks, couple months, I'm sleeping underneath a bridge again. Another story is, I was in Alaska. I'm about 33 years old. And when I was in Alaska, got this phone call from somebody saying they needed a nanny or something. And when I got into the house, there was like this old blonde lady, kind of like really old. Not really old, but like in her 50s, mid-50s. And when I went in there, it was like, you ever seen those TV show Hoarders or whatever? The people that just have trash all in their house and they keep everything. That's exactly what it looked like. I never met this person. When I first got there, there was another individual there already, some girl or some trans was in the living room, in this huge mess of things, and it really looked like this house, like, you need another caretaker. Like, this lady was bedridden. She wasn't paralyzed, but she seemed to be laying in bed all the time. But she seemed healthy enough to help. So what I did, the little bit of money that I had, I think I had like $150. So I went out of my money. This is where I don't have I have unemployment, like $100 a week, no disability, and I'm on food stamps, sleeping outside. So I thought I would do something very nice. Went and got a bunch of cleaning material, and out of my own pocket spent like $40, $50, like got all the cleaning stuff. And I said, look, I just want to help you. and I went into the house, and this lady's bathroom was unbelievably nasty. And like, if you walked into her room, you couldn't. There was so much like rat feces and so much crap, all trash all over the ground. You couldn't. There's no anything you stepped on was your layers on. You could barely even see the carpet on the ground. There was so much trash, and there was rats and shit. They're like rat feces and stuff. I was like, oh my god, how can you be living in like this? So anyway, I talked to this lady for a little while, and I saw syringes on the floor, and I didn't know if this lady was doing drugs. I don't think she was. She didn't seem like a drug user at all. But this lady that was a caretaker seemed like she had mental problems. Like she was just like on the floor all by herself. So anyway, I told her I'd come back. I said, I'll come back tomorrow after a couple of hours talking and evaluating the home. And it's got like 40, $50. Said, I'm going to do something nice. And I didn't feel very welcome necessarily by one of them, or by that one person, because they seemed kind of crazy, kind of like kooky. And I was just there to be kind, and I don't remember what it was. Like, I think I had asked, I was looking for work. Like, I clean your house for if you can have a place to stay or something like that. And I told him, this is a really bad environment. I'd rather sleep outside. This is very dangerous. So I'm not joking, I spent about anywhere from 5 to 7 hours non-stop just cleaning a pathway from the bathroom to her bed and her room in this like sort of one-bedroom apartment. And it's like one or two bedroom apartment, and just so she could make it to the restroom. So I went into the restroom, I cleaned that bathroom like squeaky clean, like everything, so it smelled fresh. Like the smell in that apartment was so awful. So I went in, cleaned the entire bathroom, so at least she has a place to use the restroom, brush her teeth, some lotion, all that kind of stuff to take care of hygiene, and vacuum and clean up the trash the entire way to her bed, so she can at least start getting up and be active in her life. And at this point, I know I'm not going to be staying there, but I said, before I leave, I want to make sure you have a place, just, at least to make some efforts for your home. I said, I can't believe you're living in this type of environment. I said, this is really bad. You have syringes and you have rat feces all over the floor. This is no way to be living. So she said she didn't have any family. She didn't have anything. And I think this person could have been a transgender. I think they were, the old lady. So anyway, I didn't really think of anything of it. And I cleaned for like 5 or 7 hours. I'm not joking. I found syringes all over the place, and this lady did not seem like, she wasn't a drug user. She wasn't. I think it was like just diabetes or whatever they use, insulin, and then just throwing the needles on the floor. And she could barely kind of get up and use the restroom and make it. And I cleaned it up real path and whatever I could, and not violate any of the possessions this person had. And I said, well, I got to go now. At least I wanted to do this for you. And I don't remember why I had to leave. I don't know if it was like a flight or I decided I needed to leave the city. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that's pretty much the whole story of it. But I know that I wasn't really welcome there, and they just were looking for someone to maybe take care of them. So what I did is I called, I think it was Child Protective Services, so that lady would be fine. I said, look, it's none of my business, but I do care for this person's well-being. I said, I would go and I would check, and I don't remember what the story was, because I think she said Child Protective Services, and I wouldn't say Child Protective Services like elderly people's or something. Services have already been there, and they were possibly going to, take legal action because of some other issue before I even got there. And it was so horrendous that I was like, this is not safe. Like, this person's supposed to be taking care of you. Like, you can end up dead all by yourself. And so I did my best to clean the whole place as much as I could. I mean, 5 to 7 hours, the bathroom was clean toilet, sinks and stuff, and the mirrors. I got Windex, all that kind of stuff. And so I ended up leaving and called the next day to, like, I don't know, it was some type of services group, and or some type of organization, that I said, hey, this lady I think isn't particularly in the safest environment. I think it's important for you to go there, and they may be able to get treated much more better. I walked in there was trash beyond anything you can imagine. This lady's bedridden, and the caretaker there didn't seem to care about this person. The person didn't, like, when I got there, didn't seem like to care about this person at all. And I ended up leaving, and they said, okay, thank you, we'll make sure this lady's going to be okay, or something like that. And I was like, okay, I just wanted to make sure this person, I didn't get paid for it, I didn't do anything. Here I am spending 40, $50, I got nothing in my bank account, I'm homeless, sleeping outside, no money, and the smell in that apartment was so potent and thick. I was like, I don't know how you were able to live in this type of environment. This can't be very healthy at all. And some of the things that no one knows about, or at least I don't think anybody did, throughout my voyages of being homeless and traveling, is that me come across these people. And some of them, like I said, were also very bad. Like, I came across when I was 31 years old, and I first started to get homeless, and after about a couple of years of being homeless. And I was about 31, 32, right before I went to Alaska. And I met this guy by the name of Richard Morosky. And this situation is where I thought I was going to get raped for a moment. Like, I thought this guy was going to just strictly for sex. And this guy was 70 years old. And after about 3 days, he said, I can give you, like, I posted on Craigslist, hey man, I heard you saw your Craigslist ad. I got a place maybe you can stay for a while. Why don't you just come over to my house, my apartment? It was a pretty nice apartment. And this guy was 70 years old. Like, he was kind of on his little walker. And he had like his little walking deal that he would walk. And he's a white guy. And I remember we sat at both corners of the living room as his TV was playing. And he did something that was very pedophile, like crazy. Like, he immediately pulled out his penis, and he just pulled it out and just stared at me. And this came out of nowhere. Like, I'm having a normal conversation. I'm just having a normal conversation, and this guy just pulls out his penis. And like, he has a big dong. Like, he just pulls it out, and he looks at me like, and I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? I think this guy wants to rape me or some shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? And this guy's very clear-headed. And so then he backs up a little bit, then he backs up a little bit, and he backs up a little bit. And he's like maybe already 5 feet away from me, but he's doing something sort of kind of crazy when he's doing this. Like, I don't know if he's trying to train me, or he's done this to people before, or maybe a kid. So I end up, I'm standing there, and I get kind of freaked out. And then this guy starts to masturbate, and he grabs his big dong, and he's masturbating, and he masturbates while he looks at me, and he's like across the room, and the TV's playing, and I'm like in total shock. I have no money, no place to go. It's snowing outside, and I don't know what the fuck to do. And they're shooting me with electronic devices in the fucking apartment, and I'm thinking that they can rape me. Whoever's shooting these electronic devices and whoever's ordering whatever's going on, they can fucking rape me if they want to. And for some reason, I guess I was at a just sheer scared and fear. I don't say anything, and I'm like, why are you doing this? Are you alright, man? Are you okay? It's like, I'm not gay. I'm like, have to tell him. He's like, hey, man, I'm not interested in this. And he stops after like an hour of masturbating. I'm like paying attention to the TV, and I'm like scared. I'm like, don't even want to get up out of my chair, and I'm thinking like, I may have to push this guy off, or if he comes on to me, I don't want to have to hit this guy, because he's, masturbating, and like he's getting off of me sexually. And he goes to bed like it's normal. He said, you could sleep on the floor, I won't bother you, or something like that. So I go to sleep, wake back up. Then I'm on the other side of the room on the sofa, love seat, and then he sleeps in this fancy chair the whole time. begin to have this normal conversation, and it's very weird. Like, it's a normal conversation, but about 3 times a week, he pulls out his penis while he's watching TV, and he looks at me, staring at me, and he's masturbating, and he's jacking off. And I tell him, I was like, dude, what? He goes, I just came here to a place to stay. He was like, why do you keep doing that? You done this to people? And it was sort of weird, because I'm not necessarily believed that maybe this guy was a pedophile or anything, but I think he's probably done this to people before. Like, he just wants to look at people and just masturbate, and just stare at and masturbate. And he begins to tell me his stories of his life, and he acts perfectly normal. And I think we go out to eat to a restaurant. And I lived with this guy for like 4 or 5 months. I'm not kidding you, rent free. He doesn't. I don't pay one bill. He says, "Don't worry, if you stay here, you won't have to pay rent." And he seems to kind of like know a lot about my life. He seems to know a lot about my life prior to me even knowing who this guy is. My father, Raymond Palomo, he seems to know my life. Like, and I talk to my mother over the phone when I'm in this room with this guy, and I'm scared and nervous. Like, you don't understand. Like, I'm just thinking that it feels like a matter of moment before somebody eventually rapes me for real. Like, pulls down, and just fucks me in my ass, and the police officers are being told to stay away. We're gonna rape this guy. We'll figure out an alibi once we bend him over and rape him, and that he liked it, and he was just changing his mind, or whatever it was. And I'm nervous, but it never happens, nothing like that. And I go find a job, and I'm always there most of the time, and he's there, and he's always just sitting on the TV, just watching TV. So everything was pretty much normal. It's just, and he had normal conversations. For some reason, he likes sitting on his comfortable chair and just masturbating and looking at me for a few hours. And he would drink alcohol. He's like 70 years old, and he would get a bottle of whiskey, and he would drink whiskey, and he would just sip on some whiskey, and he would just kind of pour a little bit of soda and a little bit of whiskey and mix it with a little straw, and just sip on it on a cup the whole night. And he wouldn't drink every time, but he would drink about and he began to say, his legs were hurting from his kneecaps below, and I don't know, because he had some sort of blood circulation problem, I guess, where I don't know what it was, if he had diabetes, or a lot of older folks have this problem, but I guess like something was wrong with his legs from the kneecaps below, that he wasn't getting blood circulation, or his legs were beginning to hurt really bad. He says, my legs hurt really bad. And he looked like he was sort of just ignoring the pain, but he was getting old, and he was bald, and but this guy was somewhat very healthy. It was wild, because like, I think it was probably a month after staying there, he drove me to Colorado, like the Red Rocks, and to all these different places, and he gave me a tour of the mountains. And this guy had an eye patch. He had an eye patch, and he drove me into all these like valleys and mountains and area with one eye patch, and could drive perfect. It was crazy. It was one of the craziest things. This guy could drive perfectly fine. 70 years old. He wasn't drinking at the time. And he could tell me, he was like, you see all this right here? This all here was the Red Rocks that happened in the 1700s or whatever. He seemed to know a lot of the history. I'd stop by in this wooded area. He goes, yeah, if you go over here, there's some picnic tables over here. And you see all this right here? The waters, creep down to these certain points that all lead eventually to the ocean. And he told me that he used to be a teacher. He said his career, for the majority of life, he said he was a teacher. He was like a high school teacher of some kind. He was like a high school teacher. Said he lived in Europe for a little while, for a couple of years, and it was like 16th century lifestyle when he lived there. And I don't know where he got his money or anything. And there was a couple of people that came by. Like, there was a young lady that came by that gave him a shower. There was a couple guys that came in, maintenance crew, and I remember him telling me, well, don't let the maintenance crew see you, because they have to come and do some maintenance or something like that. And So I'd get up and leave, or I wouldn't say anything. Because if they ask you, just tell them that you're my cousin or something. So there was other people intervening, and I knew when these people showed up, they knew who I was. They knew exactly who I was. They knew what was going on in the entire situation. And the apartment, he said, told me to be careful not to let the apartment complex see you because you're not supposed to be staying at this location. You know, you just pay rent or whatever. You're not on the lease. Obviously, the people in the apartment knew exactly who I was because I happened to walk in there to pick up a package once or twice. And they knew exactly who I was. I'd help him do his laundry, and he'd tell me a little bit about his life, and it was like an old folk man sort of storytelling situation. And then finally, after about 5 months, he said, it's probably, it was time for me to go ahead and look for another place. He goes, probably best you start looking for another place. And I was like, all right, man. After about 5 or 6 months, it was 4 to 5 months. So I get up leaving, clean up his apartment or whatever. I'm very neat. I save up a little bit of money. That's how I save my money to go to Alaska. And that was it. So I never hear from this guy again. Never saw him again. He had a crucifix up on his wall, a Jesus crucifix. And he went to like a funeral once. Said he had a friend that died. And he had a Bible. So this guy was like a Jesus worshiper. Like he did believe in Jesus. He had a crucifix and he did believe in God. So he ends up, I never see this guy again. I'm like, it's the weirdest experience. But I was really scared. I thought this was like a raping situation. And you don't understand how weird it is. I'm 30 years old. And there's this old man doing this. He's 70 years old, and he's pulling his pants and jacking off in front of me. And within the first couple of days, he sort of does his behavior to like lure me into then go along with what he wanted me to do, so he can just look at me masturbate. And sure enough, I was there and I let him. And I'd look away and just pay attention to the TV, and I'm like, seeing with his big old dong just like masturbating, doing this shit on his chair. And I'm like, man, when he goes, man, you're always jacking off, man. Why don't you just watch TV, man? It's kind of nasty. I was like, it's just nasty. Why are you looking at me and doing that? I was like, no place to live, no money, terror and fear. And this is some of the just circumstances and crazy environments that I was placed in. You don't understand some of the circumstances that I had been in. And like I'd walk into like Denny's to get something to eat, and it'd be like 3-4 feet of snow outside, and all I could think about was like these waiters knows about what's going on, and they're all like telling the guy that he's supposed to masturbate in front of me. Like I'm fucking nervous, like constantly, and like there are police officers around me. Like if they happen to be walking into an IHOP or Denny's, all I could think about is they know they know who I am, and all is like they know exactly what's going on. It's very fearful in a situation because you don't understand that I can't go to the police for any kind of reason. I have to be able to just either defend myself or run away. And the fear of the electronic devices is horrible, and crazy shit that they were doing to me while I was there shooting me with these electronic devices is that the police officers were entirely in on this. They had been notified on their personal cell phones. This guy is talking about our gays. This guy is a bad guy. Let's just persecute him until he dies. Like, you're on their bad list. They know who I am, and I'm permanently on their bad list. And they knew what was going on. You could tell by their attitudes and the way they knew what was going on. And it was almost like I felt that they were trying to sexually change me to become gay and start doing sexual behaviors, oral sex, anal sex, because the police officers were entirely knowing what the fuck was going on. I'd go into a restaurant or something like that, or I go to get, because it's one of the first times I went skiing. Is I was staying at his place, and he let me save up enough money, and I went skiing for the first time in my life. I don't remember what it was. I think it was it El Dorado? No, that was like the second time I went skiing. Yeah, I think it was El Dorado. Yeah, I went to El Dorado skiing and snowboarding. There was a snowboarding shop right next door. It was a very mellow apartment, and but nothing ended up turning like that. But to be in those types of circumstances and no family, all I could think of was like, what would Frankie, Julian, my uncle Beto, or my mother would think that this is happening? Like, I'm 30 years old, a cancer transplant patient, raped by a transgender at 28 years old, and here I am. People begin to victimize me. Like, I began getting phone calls from a few different people to go to their apartment. They're looking for a roommate. I can't even stay with them because I don't have any money. And I can tell when I walk into the place, it's really fucking suspicious. Like, they know exactly who I am, and I'm like a public enemy. Like, there are like military behaving on me. Like, how much can we take from this guy? How much we can steal and victimize him and scum him? I don't even know who these people are. They didn't even look like legitimate apartments. Like somebody just gave them the keys or something. And I can't even tell you how crazy it was in those circumstances. So anyway, this is what gets even more crazier. I turned 35, finally get on disability. And it's like in Fort Worth. And I want to say it looked like one of the nursing homes my dad was once upon at. My father, Raymond Palomo. He was there for a couple of days before they then transferred him. I went to that nursing home once or twice. It was in Fort Worth. And remember I talked about that this guy, this quadriplegic, that I said that, you know, not the guy that owned his house, but the guy that was in the hospital that wanted me to kind of hijack a car and take him away from the place for a joyride. And I told him I can't do that. It's illegal. I get in trouble. Well, he called me right before I went to London in the UK, and he called me and he said he wanted a special cake from the Cheesecake Factory, and he wanted something to eat. So I went and got my money. Nice thing to do. This is like right after this is what I was told he died. And he said they transferred him to this nursing home. And so I went and visited him and talked to him for a little while. And I told him, hey, I'm going to go to the DMC and give support. And, you know, finally close the doors on that part of my life. And, you know, that it was a blessing for the time that it lasted to some degree. And, you know, that I did get to, and to make music. And I was gonna go there, you know, tell him what I was gonna do, and I got a cooler. This is like to really treat this guy, this quadriplegic. I get this cooler, go to Walmart and I buy this cooler, like you put organs in or whatever, like a little mini cooler, so that when I get the expensive, you know, tuxedo pies or whatever it was he wanted, truffle pies, cakes, a couple slices of them, I put ice in it so it would stay as fresh as possible, and put ice on it again, close it. And so I brought the meal as well, and I put it in a special bag so that when I finally got to the nursing home, he had something to eat, and it would be as fresh like he just got out of the restaurant. So that's what I did. And I told him, I visited him for a couple of hours, and then it was like the next time when I got all that food. And I was talking to this guy, and he's a quadriplegic, and I told him, he was like, yeah, have fun, man. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go out there and just give some support. And, you know, I figured, you know, this is part of my life, you know, he had a pee bag. He seemed to be pretty same shape that I saw him when I saw him at the other hospital. But instead of going to a hospital, he was in a nursing home now. And I talked to him for a little while, and I'm telling you, like, before I went even got this food, like after talking to him for about 4 or 5 hours, the first time I went to this nursing home instead of the hospital where he was at, I talk and I look over to the bed to next to him, and you know who I see? Richard Morosky, the guy that was masturbating all the time. And I look over, and he looks older. I mean, he looks older, and except I look at his knees, and he's missing his legs. His legs got amputated, both of them. And I said, hey, I said, is your name Richard Morosky? He goes, no, my name is something. And this guy was just looking like vague. He never really made eye contact with me. And he was just like almost waiting to die for real. He didn't look terribly sick. He looked like he was just pretty much like he was ready to leave. He wanted to leave this world. Not like depressed, but like he just didn't want to be alive anymore. He was wanting to sort of ready to leave the world. And he kept, his eyes were really wide, and he was just looking toward the ceiling. And he said, hey, can you turn that TV down for me just a little bit? Yes, sir, no problem, sir, no problem. You know, as respectable as I can, turn down the TV for him or something like that he wanted. And I asked him, are you sure you're not, you look just like Richard Mur-" And it was him. I don't know why he told me he had a different name. I don't know why. I said, you're Richard Murowski. You look just like, I mean, I know it was him, but he's telling me he wasn't. He said he had a different name. He never made eye contact with me, but maybe just a moment. And I said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and get this, I think his name was Paul, maybe. I said, hey, I'm going to get this guy some food and some pies. Would you like for me to come pick you up something? He goes, I asked him, I goes, you know, you guys talk to probably one another and y'all out here alone. I might as well get you something too, man. Once again, I do something very nice, and I say, what do you like? You like German chocolate, truffle, strawberry cake? Whatever you like. I'm going to Cheesecake Factory. He gave me, I think, a flavor or something he wanted. He said, that'd be really nice. So the next couple of days, I show up again, and I bring all this in, and I bring him some cake, and I bring this guy some food. And the guy that I already seen before. It was just right, like a week before I go to London. And then I come over, I go to this, look over at this guy, and I say, hey, I got you some cake, man. And he says, yes, can I have a couple bites? And this guy looked like, I was literally feeding this guy with a fork and this fancy cake. And I was feeding him. I said, here, let me get you some cake, man. Enjoy a little bit of life. Would you like some soda? I got some soda, whatever kind of soda you wanted or whatever. And he never made eye contact with me. He was just like looking up, like almost waiting. And he did something when he was laying in that bed after a couple bites or something, or right before I left. I was looking at him, and he looked, and it looked like he was flatlining in front of me. Like, I had never been, I've been in some pretty bad environments, but this guy looked like he was like leaving the world, and I got really scared, like, because it came out of nowhere. Because I was talking to this guy, and you know, it's like I got him some pieces of bites, and I, you know, chit chatter a little bit with him, keep him company too. I was like, you guys, you know, argue, and I was kind of joking around, you know, kind of liven up the situation. And he was looking toward the sky, and he said, "Thank you for that." And he said, "Thank you for that," and he was looking toward the ceiling, and if there was anybody that I had seen that looked like they were like dispersing, like they were dying, like they like flatlined, and I remember looking and I got scared, like, because I was like, I'm not a nurse, I'm not this professional environment, okay. Yeah, I didn't want to get in trouble, and it scared me. I got really scared, and I remember just looking at it, and I kind of sort of put my head down very quickly, and I sort of kind of gave him his personal space, like to let him be. And there wasn't anything like he was in pain, he wasn't screaming, it was nothing. It was just like, I don't know, it was very weird, but it scared me because I thought it looked like his eyes, like he was wanting to leave his body or something, and it scared me. That did sort of freak me out because I was like, because it felt like he was I don't know if I believe, you know, I don't know how to explain people's perceptions of what they think God is or Jesus Christ, or they see angels or anything like that, or spirits, but I didn't really recognize this, but whatever it was his soul or energy, like wanting to sort of leave the world, or he was looking at God, like the beloved God that we all hope that exist, and all the horrors and horrible monstrous things in history and all human beings in this planet Earth, that that maybe there is a God that is watching. But it scared me. That did scare me. That when I saw him, because he did it out of nowhere, and I felt kind of like, because I got scared, because I was thinking like, I don't know if somebody was like the nurses or something were gonna like, because there was no really any staff. There was staff that came in a couple times. I think they'd bring in some like water or something, and I kind of fed them like some snacks or what they had over there before I went and got the food, or the day before I went and got the food. But it was right before I went to London. And it scared me. That did scare me, because when I saw him, I could look in his eyes, and it was like he was looking. It was like the reality of what you think, that when you don't think that maybe you have events that take place that makes you question whether God exists, and you think that God exists. No, this was like he was flatlining, and he was like departing his body, and it's the only time ever in my life I had seen that. I've been in circumstances where people were like that, like recently, and about a year ago, I was a guy in another apartment complex, and I had to leave there because there were some other situations that were going on. It was not safe for me to be there. It was nothing like this. No, this is Richard Morosky. This is the guy who was masturbating in front of me, but he was telling me a different name. That did scare me. Like I said, that frightened me, because I was looking. I was like, God is real. There's something. I know that it doesn't seem like that at times, and it feels so void, because I have been there and felt that. Even I read about Mother Teresa had a roller coaster of feeling like that at times, losing faith. But this, when I looked, and I wouldn't say necessarily, but it was like whatever they say that the human body contains energy or has a soul of some kind. This is kind of what it looked like. I mean, if somebody was sort of leaving his body, and he was leaving through his eyes, and like his presence, and he didn't shiver, he didn't shake, he just kind of like, it was like, I don't know if like the presence of the room felt like there was something else there, and like God from the sky or something, and I got scared. I was like, man, I better do everything God tells me to do, because I mean that did scare me, because he just did it out of nowhere. And it was right after I fed him a piece of cake. I was like, how you doing? I was like, as friendly as you can, because these guys are, they have nobody to talk to them, just keep them busy for a while. I'm just a loser. I'm a nobody. I'm nearly digging in trash cans for food just a year ago. People were spitting at me. People were throwing trash. I'm nothing. I'm just, keep these guys company. You cheer them up they're in a nursing home. They don't see a young guy like me. And, doing my kind of actness like I used to do with my father for 7 years at the nursing home. And, but that, yeah, after I fed him some cake and some of his dessert, and was nice enough to bring as fresh to him as the other guy, and he said, in the way that he said thank you for that. He said it in a way like no one brought him anything. Like no one had brought him food or special cakes or special food. And he was, I mean, I have to say, he seemed as sincere as you can get. Like, thank you for doing that for me or something. Like that's. And he was right after I gave him, and it kind of jolted me, kind of like I got scared, because I thought this guy was dying. He like flatlined and died in front of me. I got scared, and I just kind of put my head down very quickly and looked. And I was looking at this guy, and I was given a prayer. I mean, they just put my head, because I was looking at this, and I kind of go like this, and I just, I started to give a prayer, because I thought this guy was just died in front of me. And I'm looking right into his eyes, and, from a sort of distance, he's in his bed, there's a curtain right between situation. He's like right with his Paul's this gear and this Richard Morosky guy's here. And I get kind of nervous, and then I talk to this. He can kind of look at me and can tell that I'm kind of nervous. I get scared. I begin to kind of give it about 5 minutes, couple minutes, and I kind of ease up and try to talk something positive, and I get up and I say, "Hey, how you going, Morosky? Doing okay?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm okay." Or I don't even say Richard. I say, "Hey, sir, you doing okay?" And I say kind of change the mood of the environment a little bit more cheerful. Say, "All right, well, I gotta go, and y'all try not to have too much fun together. I gotta get going. I wish both of y'all the best. I thought I'd just stop by and give y'all some dessert, something nice to eat." And within about 3 days, I was off to London. And I'm most positive that guy's passed away. He's Richard Morosky. He's passed away by now. But it was weird. I don't know how this guy ended up being in Colorado, where I saw him when I was 31 years old and I first got to Colorado. And I go to Dallas, and it's Fort Worth Nursing Home, and there he is in that very bed. And he wasn't part of the plan. I thought this guy was already dead or died from old age or moved on in his life, wherever he did. How could this guy just show up there? How did this guy even show up there? And, would somebody plot this against me? And that's what I thought. I thought somebody must have set this up. What are the odds of me just showing up? Paul, this guy, I had seen this guy a couple months earlier, and I brought him some food here. I'm bringing him food again and some cake from Cheesecake Factory. And here's Richard Morosky. I'm like, this is not a coincidence. I didn't just see you several states away of all the people, never heard from him again. And there he is. Anyway, I end up leaving. And so I'm sure this guy, and this guy ended up passing away. And Richard Morosky, or he gave me another name. He said his name was something else. And he left. I'm assuming, because he was already old. He was like 70, probably like 75 there. He looked really old, and he didn't look like he was necessarily... He looked like he was at a very just old age. Didn't look like he had cancer. Looked like he was just really, really old. He had his legs that were gone from his kneecap below. He didn't have knees. I said, "How you doing, Mr.? You look, this guy I used to know, just like Mr. Morosky. Gave me a place to stay many years ago. You sure you're not him, man? You sure?" He goes, "No, my name's something," and he gave me a different name. And I know it was him. But it was situations where I'm in a room talking to both of them, and kindness that I did that, I don't have to do this, and most people don't. None of these people here go to visit people, give a damn, anything like that. And I was kind enough of all the homeless experiences and being homeless at times to, cheer these people up and give them some nice things to eat, and by their choice. What do you want? You want, peach cobbler, whipped cream with chocolate on the side or whatever, pudding. And I'd get it specifically the way he wanted it and bring it to him. And I was spending my own money, making it as fresh as I could. And I never heard from him. But I remember that did scare me. I thought this guy because he didn't look like he was going to flatline. He didn't look like he was going to die. I got scared. Because I was like, why are you going to... You're about to just... I had already my booked tickets, and I was just in regular clothes. But he kind of went back to his normal situation. He just kept on... He was just looking straight to the ceiling, just staring. So, and he was perfectly conscious, could hear me and this guy talk. I left, and I think after I got to London and came back, like a month later, I called, and that's when I was told this guy passed away. He was a quadriplegic. And, I'm 42 now. That was 7 years ago. I know this other guy that I saw, he's not alive anymore. He had a crucifix and a Bible he kept at his door. He had a crucifix in his door. I was very nice to this old man who was jacking off in front of me. Very nice to him. respective, cleaned my environments, and kept my clothes, not take up as very little space as I could. Just keep my laundry and everything contained where I need it to be, and that's it. Not do anything. And but that was some of the homeless experiences. You go to these homeless environments. There's several other stories that happened to me, where I'd be in environments and I would just, maybe, can I sleep on your front of your door on the doormat? Can I have just a roof over my head? Because I was tired of sleeping underneath the bridges for months on end, months and months, and freezing cold temperatures, and nobody and nothing, and just eating shit food and nothing. I was like, and I would type this on Craigslist. I would tell people, and I would say, if you have a place where I can stay, where your dog sleeps, I'll clean the area where your dog is, wherever it is. You know how some people buy like a little bed for their dog and they put it in the corner next to the door? I said, I'll clean just a place for your door, and I'll pay you $15. This is how low and how bad I was being treated. And I would ask people to sleep near their doors, the corners of a living room, just to have a roof, and I would beg to see if I could, where their dog were sleeping. And I would tell them I would vacuum and clean. Sometimes I would tell them when I got there, I'll clean the little spot next to your dog or whatever, and just make sure that I can, have just a roof over my head, away from the elements, just to get a good night of sleep. And that's how bad it got. People don't understand what that feels like. And I'm 31 years old, I'm 32 years old, I'm begging years. Every couple of weeks I have to refresh my Craigslist ad and put it up again to hopefully reach out to someone. There were other stories that happened to me when I came across in Colorado or in Dallas or in all cities in Dallas, Plano, Carrollton, Farmers Branch, Capel, Irving, downtown, all kinds of places. But there were these kind acts, things that I did, and some of these people are no longer alive, and you start to lose hope. And nobody visited these people. Like, nobody cared, just like nobody cared about me. To at least enjoy a moment of life and talk about some nice things. And I didn't have to do that. I'd spent 7 years, and there's no money in this. I didn't get money from these people. I spent my own pocket money, and I was digging in a trash can for food. So people don't understand all the money that I spent, and all the money that I have spent going and traveling. Don't understand how the lowest, cheapest scrum that I can scrape up. Any extra money I got to build model ships and to build these little DJ stuff and little gifts. Everything that extra money I had was just to build a gift and give it to someone else. Just to leave myself broke. I would go and eat Jack in the Box tacos for $6 or $7, which is unhealthy, just so I know that I could have extra money to build a model ship and extra things I could send my brother Julian a gift. And I would ended up sleeping outside within a couple of weeks and months, for weeks on end and months at a time, all over again, just so that I could send somebody else a gift, or I could send him some postcards from Denver, Colorado. I can't even describe what that was. I could go on and on for how many hours that was really like. No money. I have sleeping outside. I have $100, and I get paid unemployment in a couple of days, another $100. I'd get $30 to buy postcards and then send them to my mother, or I'd buy a gift and send it to someone, or any money that I got, it was extra. I'd build and want to give somebody else a gift. That's all I wanted to do. I'd have to make a gift physically, a sculpture or a t-shirt, or give my mother another gift. Just leave myself broke with no money and give it to somebody else. And this is how I lived so much. So people, when they saw traveling, you saw me get on a plane, but I'd be sleeping at the airport, nearly dry heaving. Like dry heaving at the airport. Look, the scuffling look, that was fucking dying or some shit a couple of times at the airport. Just so I wouldn't have to sleep at a hotel. And I'd have some extra money to buy my mother a gift. people have no idea what that was really like so often. You know, the entire time I was like all these model ships I bought, every penny that I got to scrape up, I built model ships and all these toys just to build and select the toys and all this other stuff for my mother for the gifts, just to give gifts away, to be broke all over because I didn't care. Not about I wasn't not caring about myself, but hoping to reach out for hope because there was so much time and energy, and it was religious. It was a gift to someone else too. That life was important. Because all I experienced was homelessness, begging to people for so long. I mean, I even when I was 29 years old, I remember sleeping in an office building for like weeks. I had I had like unemployment again, $100 a week, $200 a week. Sleeping in an office on the fourth floor, sneaking in, and like I'd never been to this place, and I just sneak in to sleep on one of the floors. I mean, this is crazy. I met this guy, and he's like, never, this black guy, kind of flamboyant, and was like, oh, hey, come here, help you fill out job applications. And it was crazy. He worked for like a temp service. And he was like, you can sleep upstairs on the fourth floor, and I was sleeping in an office, oval office all through the night, underneath the table, all by myself. Been homeless for about a week. I remember my mother dropping me off there. It was right next to Child Protective Services. And I told my mother actually dropped me off there. I said, yeah, I know a guy, he's letting me sleep in the office, and I was sleeping on the third floor. And it wasn't abandoned. It was like on a weekend. I slept there for like, I think 2 or 3 days, and it was, or maybe more. And I snuck in, and I was sleeping underneath, and I remember just looking out the window. It was early, 6 o'clock in the morning. This guy just shows up out of nowhere in like a suit. And he just, weirdest thing, he just, like, he knows I was homeless. And I'm like, I was waiting for him to tell me I'm going to call the police or here or something. But he didn't. And I began to tell him what my ambitions were in life. And he's just sitting there like this. And, he's looking out the window, but he's on the other side of the table, his Oval Office. And he's in his business suit. He's a black young guy, about 25 years old to 29 years old. 25 to 29 years old. Clean cut. Look educated. He was like in a very clean suit. And he was just kind of like, and I began to tell him what my dreams were and how I wanted to go to school and make something and change my life. Time goes by so fast, and even though I was appreciative of the music that I did create, I really wanted to do something else in my life from here on out. It's not to say that I wouldn't have dabbled in it again for a little bit, but I really wanted to do something else. And, he wasn't against it or anything. He was just listening, and he talked about it, and he said he graduated from this university, and he was having like this mentor, I think, with me. Like The Biggest Loser fucked up their whole life, or you think they fucked up their whole life, and you see the college graduate, and he's trying to learn from the person that if he would have taken the same path I would have taken, that he would have possibly ended up in the same situation, but instead he got the college degree and went to school and became something. And I began to tell him, don't waste your life. I was like 31, I think, was it after Colorado? It was right before Colorado. And he was in his early 20s. I don't know, maybe not 29. He could have been younger than 25. Let's say 25. 25-ish maybe, a couple of years younger. Telling him not to waste his life. And I said, just look like me, man. I have no family. Nobody cares about me. Nobody cares about my life. I have people spitting and throwing trash at me. You did good when you went to school, graduated from university, man. Wish the best to you, man. And I was giving all this sort of best advice you could imagine, the career choices I made. And didn't say, he was very calm. He just kind of did this. He was just looking out the window and just thinking. I was like, man, I don't have any family. I got all these brothers, and not one of them called me. And still to this day, 12 years, 10 years later, 12 years later. This is 12, 13 years ago. Same thing. There's all these experiences that people have no idea. Like, well, those are some of the experiences of homelessness. Some kind things I did to people and nobody knows. And I was having people throw trash at me, spit, and thinking that I was just doing this because I had done this shit already for 7 years. And there's no money into it either.